Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Boarding Now, the Hindu's aviation podcast. This is your host, Jagriti Chandra. Since our last episode, a lot of exciting developments have taken place in the aviation space, both internationally as well as domestically. To discuss these, as well as his own airline's plans, we've got Akasa Air's founder and CEO, Vinay Dube, with us. Welcome to the show, Vinay, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jack.
So, Vinay, this is just the third episode that we are recording today. And I must tell you that while our previous episodes were informed by news events, this is somewhat of an audience choice. And, some of our listeners of a very, very fledgling podcast suggested that they would like to hear your insights. So I thought I'll just let you know about that.
Wonderful. It's always flattering that people want to hear me. It's humbling, and I appreciate it very much. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I'll begin with a quick note about Akasa. The year was 2022. The world was in the throes of COVID-19, and the sentiment around air travel was one of pessimism. There were restrictions on travel globally, and as demand plummeted, a large number of aircraft were grounded. Employees were sacked or sent on leave without pay. But undeterred by all these developments, Akasa Air was launched in August of that year. This year, it will complete 3 years of its existence. It has grown to a 28 aircraft fleet, but there have been ups and downs during this journey, as Boeing delayed the deliveries of the 737 MAX 8s because of the scrutiny it faced from the US regulator. But the airline is now hopeful of resuming its annual capacity increase of 12 to 16 aircraft per year. It serves 20 domestic and 5 international destinations. It has an order book of a total 226 aircraft to be delivered until 2032. Out of these, 28 have already been delivered. That gives us a figure of 198 additional aircraft. And if you allow me to be a little philosophical, there's also a sort of a death and birth cycle happening there, because we saw Jet Airways collapse 3 years ago in 2019, April of 2019, in fact. And then 3 years later, in 2022, you had Akasa. And the common link between the two airlines is Vinay Dube and his team of, the founders who set up this airline. He held affairs at Jet Airways between 2017 and 2019. So let's start this conversation, Vinay. I just wanted to sort of get to know from you, what was the spark that led to Akasa's birth, and what did you want to carry on from Jet Airways, or what did you want to do differently here?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Jagriti. Appreciate it. I will tell you that there was no one sort of silver bullet. There's no sort of single thought that led to Akasa's birth, other than the fact that as a nation, we deserve to have choices in air travel. And as time continued to go on, there were fewer and fewer choices. Whereas, our economy continued to show very, very robust signs of improving and stay that way, for the foreseeable future. I think, we're going to be one of the world's largest. We already are, but we will continue to be, a larger and larger piece of the world's global economy. And, with an economy that large, with the geographical size of the country and the population of our country, the thought that led to Akasa's birth was the fact that really there was a sufficient space for multiple airlines to be successful. It's not that the success of one had to hinge on the demise of another, but the fact that there was plenty of room for multiple airlines to be successful. And it seemed, albeit in the midst of a pandemic, seems like the best time to start an airline. And that's really it. It was a very simple thesis.
So, Vinay, 3 years on, when you look back at the launch phase, what do you think were some of the unexpected moments, either delightful or difficult?
To be honest, at some macro level, it has played out exactly the way I think we had anticipated. And so just to maybe do a little sort of time check. So we launched our first commercial flight in August of 2022. But the planning of the airline started in August of 2020. And if you can, date back to August of 2020, genuinely, there was no more than maybe 5-7% of the world's, aircraft flying. But at that point, we thought that, the world would be resilient as a human race. We would be resilient. We'd come out of COVID. India, which had a very large domestic market, would be one of the fastest aviation economies to come out of COVID. And that's largely the way it has played out, at a macro level. Look, there's so many things in aviation that are unanticipatable, so to speak. The conflict that we have just gone through, the bomb threats that we had a little while ago, fluctuations in foreign exchange. There's always something. But to be honest, that is par for the course in aviation. If you're in aviation, there's always something around the corner, and you have to plan for it. So planning to be well capitalized, planning for one of the industry's best cost structures, planning with a professional management team that has been through multiple cycles in aviation, that's able to understand how to deal with the odd situations that are thrown at you. These are the kinds of things that you need to put together, and allow these professionals, the latitude to be able to make decisions and build a professional organization. And when you have that, you're able to weather the ups and downs that are inevitable with aviation.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen this in the recent past, as you just mentioned. There'll always be some googly coming your way, and aviation is so sensitive to any little development happening in a far corner of the world. And I want to come to some of those recent developments that we've seen globally as well as domestically. These pertain to some trade developments or diplomacy or geopolitical events. To start with, last month, when we saw Donald Trump's tariff policies that intended to sort of protect U.S. manufacturing as well as correct the trade deficit. And which sort of led to ripples across the aviation industry. There were fears. We have the Boeing CEO coming on record talking about how this could impact their supply chains. Were you worried at that point in time, and do you continue to be worried as a Boeing client, as a Boeing customer?
Yeah, so I would say, Jagriti, pardon me, I got some of that question, not the entirety. So I apologize if I give you a tangential answer. It's not because I'm evading it. It's just because I didn't, through audio quality, catch all of it. But I would say, look, Boeing has been an incredibly supportive partner of ours. Some of the finest airlines, in fact, most of the finest airlines in the world, and some of the most resilient ones in the world, have been built on a single aircraft type and a single manufacturer. And so we continue to be extremely proud of our partnership with them. We wouldn't be in where we are, and we're talking about 28 aircraft, but I'm happy to announce that aircraft number 29 and 30 are 3 weeks away. So if we were having this call 3 weeks from now, we'd be talking about 30 aircraft, and to go from 0 to 30 within less than 3 years. And these are 30 brand new aircraft is done because of the partnership that we have with Boeing. And no airline in the 125-year history of global aviation has ever gone from 0 to 30 sort of brand new aircraft in this short span of time. And so, the partnership that we have with them is something that is, rock solid. It's something that we're very proud of. And we think that's, that is an integral part of our success.
All right. But Vinay, I mean, we've seen in the last 1 year, this was probably one of your most challenging phases. You weren't getting aircraft delivered at the pace that you had initially set out for the airline, the pace of 12 to 16 aircraft. You received about 6 aircraft between February of 2024 and April of 2025. Um, do you think now you're sort of sorted and that issue is behind you, and you expect to receive a consistent aircraft deliveries at a regular pace?
I think so. I think it's not just me saying this, but as you hear, the words that are coming out from the Boeing leadership, I think there's a lot more optimism about their future. I think you're seeing it in the data. We had, just to give you a sense of the deliveries that we have this year, and the two more, there's proof points of 2 deliveries happening in June. So absolutely, I think that the worst is behind for them, and we fully expect us to get back to a much more regular delivery cadence.
Okay, so are you able to share some definite figures of how much do you expect
No,
in this financial year?
we don't share those. We shared those right at the beginning. As far back as 22 and 23. But today we don't share delivery guidance anymore. But I can tell you in words, even though I can't share numbers, that we fully expect to get deliveries in line with the expectations that we have.
All right, fair enough. But also, Vinay, you mentioned that many successful airlines of the world are also, single fleet airline. But increasingly, there's a feeling that because of the supply chain issues that the world has seen in the past, 4 or 5 years post pandemic, that perhaps there's also a feeling that you can't entirely rely on one supplier. Have you considered diversifying your fleet? Is that a thought that comes to your mind, or you've settled
Yeah.
that internally?
No. Yeah. So Jagriti, no. As you said in your introduction of Akasa, we've got a very long order book. We've got 200 approximately odd. We may be 197, 198. I won't do the math, but that's a lot of planes still coming. A lot of extremely important deliveries. These are modern generation aircraft, extremely fuel efficient. These are one of the most comfortable aircraft built. Of course, we've put extremely comfortable seats. We've got an extra inch of foam that we've put in a seat, so we think there's a little more bottom friendly seating on Akasa than you would find normally in the industry. So for us, I think we'll remain focused on our partnership with Boeing. We'll remain focused on really serving our customers to the level that we have. I think we're known for our food, we're known for our seat comfort, we're known for our on-time performance, we're known for being kinder and gentler in the way we approach our service, and that's what we're focused on. At this point, there's no sense that we need to diversify our fleet.
All right. So tell me something, Vinay. I mean, when China briefly decided to, suspend accepting deliveries from Boeing, did that sort of cheer you up? Did that, briefly create some sort of hope that some of those aircraft could come to you?
Yeah. So I'll say a few things. First and foremost, actually, the planes that we got initially weren't the ones rejected by Chinese carriers. So that's a misnomer. And let me correct that. Secondly, I would say that we would never, rejoice or be happy in someone else's misery. That's no way to lead your life, whether it's on the personal side or on the business side. And then thirdly, and more importantly, deliveries don't work in this way, meaning that if China says no, it's not the next millisecond Boeing is out there peddling these aircraft to other people. That's just not the way it works. Maybe from time to time, that's the way it's reported. These are, lengthier discussions that take place. These are related to various postures countries take in relation to, trade discussions that are taking place. So look, there was neither hope nor anger nor anguish, nor there was no emotion attached to this. It was just a feeling that these geopolitical issues and the tariffs and trade discussions that are going, there was great optimism that they would end, and that Boeing would be able to deliver these aircraft to the Chinese carriers. That's the way it's going to play out, in my view.
And you said you also wanted to correct this misunderstanding around how planes that were not received by Chinese carriers following the
Correct.
ban on MAX aircraft were the ones that
Correct.
came to you.
So yeah, exactly. We get to when we get an aircraft delivery, if it's an aircraft from ABC country, we get to see the old placards that are put in there. We get to see what language these placards are in, and you have to physically change them, etc. And there was none of that. So I want to just correct the fact that these weren't the deliveries that Akasa got as we started the airline were not intended to go to China. Our first 24 aircraft were originally manufactured for someone else, but not for Chinese airlines.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fine. So since we were discussing the impacts of developments around the globe on aviation, and what the tariffs imposed by the US across on various countries could possibly mean for Boeing as well as its clients, I also wanted to talk about some geopolitical developments that have happened in our own country. Earlier this month, there were military strikes on India-Pakistan border, because of which 32 airports in the north and northwestern parts of the country were shut down. You serve one airport out of those 32 airports. This is Srinagar, and you had to cancel flights to Srinagar. Just talk to us about the immediate impacts of the shutdown, as well as whether you continue to see any impacts of either worries or concerns around air travel.
Yeah, so I would say, Jagriti, in a situation like this, look, I'll answer your question on impact in aviation, but I will tell you that the impact is a human impact, not so much an aviation impact. And obviously we should spare a thought for the Indian armed services and others that have really lost their lives defending our country. And so whenever we talk about a conflict like this, that's an acknowledgement and an honor that we want to confer on them. Having said that, I will now answer your question, which is in terms of impact. It was not, as you said, a huge impact for Akasa, as it was perhaps for some of our competitors, because there was just the one airport. We don't see that this is going to have a long-term impact on air travel demand. Look, let me sort of go back to the original thesis of aviation in India and why I call it the golden years. You've got 500-600 aircraft, 700 aircraft in India today. You have a country like China with between 3,500 and 4,000 aircraft. The US has 7,500 to 8,000 aircraft. India is in its nascent stage of aviation. You also have, in and along with this, an economy that is firing much faster than any one of these economies that I have mentioned over here. So when you look at the number of aircraft we have, you look at India's amazing economic engine, we are going to continue to grow, and we're going to grow for the next 30 years as a country and as an aviation industry. Anything you see is going to be a little short-term blip, but pretty much nothing is going to take away from this growth in aviation that we're going to see for 10, 20, 30 years. And it's that mindset with which Akasa is approaching its business. It's not a short term. Is something happened, we have to take a cancellation for 2 weeks. No, we're in it. We're in it to serve the country. We're in it to serve every geographical region within India, and we see nothing that is going to impede that progress for us or for the nation.
Yeah. But when I understand the longer term vision, as well as the idea of Indian aviation sector that you're talking about. But I also want to understand. Yesterday, for instance, when Indigo announced its result, the CFO spoke about how they were seeing a trend of cancellations is until about May end or so, and they expected and the reversal had begun to happen. So could you talk to us about that?
Yeah,
Have
I
you
think
seen?
so Jagriti, our data points are much smaller, and therefore I can't give you really as meaningful an example as you may get from someone, who flew to 20 out of the 32 airports, or 25 or 15 out of the. We have, we've the data points we have are much smaller, and I can tell you we're not seeing that kind of effect. We're seeing, people's willingness to continue to travel, and we're very bullish about our future.
Okay, all right. And also just want to understand, the Pakistan airspace was closed in on April of 22. Did that also impact any of your westbound flights? I mean, you have five
Again,
destinations in the Gulf region.
yeah, again, we're never happy when any airspace is closed, but fortunately, none of our flights were affected. So all our westbound flights are from either Mumbai, Bengaluru, Ahmedabad, and places that are south enough where they're not, weren't required to fly over Pakistani airspace, and so we were fortunate in that respect.
Yeah, yeah. I think if you had Dubai, perhaps, and if that was connected from Delhi, then perhaps you would have seen some impact of that. And I want to talk about the fact that you don't have access to a market like Dubai and Singapore. These are considered to be some of the hottest markets for passengers out of India. How are you sort of adjusting to that? The
Yeah.
fact that these markets are not available to you.
Yeah, so Jagriti, again, let me paint a picture for you. So today we fly to 23 domestic destinations and 5 international destinations. We fly to Kuwait, we fly to Abu Dhabi, we fly to Riyadh, Jeddah, Doha. I will tell you that there's no one or two or three markets that's going to define Akasa. I think internationally there is plenty for us. These 5 destinations, we've got plenty of destinations up north that we can go to. We will be foraying into Southeast Asia here very quickly, and there are plenty of places for us to fly. I think what is part and parcel of India's economic development is the international travel, both outbound and inbound. There's a lot of inbound tourism that we as a country are building, and there's a lot of outbound tourism that we as a country are doing. So I'd say there's no dearth of places for us to expand to internationally. And that's where we're focused on. Look, at the right time, will the Indian government decide to add capacity into Singapore, Dubai, wherever? Yes, I think at the right time they will. They'll make that call for the country, and at that point, we'd be very happy to go there. But at this point, there's plenty of other places for us to fly.
Okay. But when I do give us a sense of, how an airline such as yours goes about planning and selecting destinations, what is the criteria? How do you assess demand? How do you assess the capacity? I mean, I guess that is easier to judge. But just give us a sense of what goes behind the scenes in selecting the destinations that you do.
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you. And Jagriti, this is a much longer answer. The discipline of network planning is a much longer answer. I'll try and sort of condense it. And so I think first and foremost, it is, strategically, where do we think we want to play in? And we've decided that, look, we want to play in, 2 sectors. One is we want to play in between the metro to the tier 2 and 3 cities. We don't have a whole lot of metro to metro flying. And we will require some as you move aircraft around. But we will stay focused on metro tier, 1, 2, 3 flying, and that's a strategic move that we have made, and that's where we think we will continue to play. Second thing is, you wanna try and build some size and scale at a few airports versus spread yourself too thin. And for us, it's Mumbai, Delhi, Bengaluru, Navi Mumbai, Noida International Airport. So these are sort of elements of that. And then from there, it is a question of where we see markets that are underserved, where we see markets that are higher yielding versus low yielding, where can we build our strength on the domestic front. And on the international front, it's very similar, except it's a little more sort of regionally focused. And I've this very high level view of network planning, but it's intensely data driven. There's a lot of data that we have available in terms of historic schedules, historic capacity, historic load factors, etc., and that's what goes into the analysis of how we develop our network. And we are all we are all sort of aviation industry veterans. This is what we do, right? I don't know any other industry. My first job in 1990 was with an airline, right? And if you look around at Akasa, we're full of professionals, and we all have the latitude to do what professionals have been trained to do, and it's very data intensive in terms of designing our network, and that's a very quick synopsis.
All right. And you mentioned, Vinay, that now the plan is to put capacity for Southeast Asian destinations. Please, could you just give us some details about those plans? And one is seeing that a lot of airlines are now sort of placing their capacity in that direction. So what are some of the factors? Is it the visa-free entry, or are there other reasons as well?
No, I think it's as simple as we will fly where Indians want to fly. We will fly where Indians want. And by the way, by Indians I don't mean just the outbound Indians, but as we build our tourism and as our domestic tourism grows, where Indians want to fly is in where they want to fly people in as well, right? It's two ways, and so it's very simple. And look, there's lots of people that want to fly into Thailand and Vietnam and Indonesia and Malaysia and a whole bunch of Southeast Asian countries, and we will look to help service that demand, as we will to the CIS countries of Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. But there's also East Africa. There's always Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Nepal. And so as you draw a 6-hour circle around either Delhi or Mumbai or Kolkata or Bengaluru, look, that's in our wheelhouse. Those are the destinations that we will choose from. And as you look at Akasa's plans, as we've said, look, with the aircraft we have an order, we will be one of the 30 largest airlines in the world here in the next several years. And so we will be flying to all of these places. It's just a question of sequencing them.
Okay. You gave us a sense of what goes behind the scenes in determining what destinations to serve. And for the benefit of our listeners, who are keen travelers and some of them aviation enthusiasts, could you also tell us how one should go about planning their travel and how to get the best deals? What are the best days to make a booking? I believe that there are some industry secrets around this.
If they're industry secrets, you're talking to the wrong person at that level. I would leave you with just one thought that I would say, and people would, might argue, and some might say, absolutely, that's the wrong advice, but I'll give you my advice. And my advice is book early.
Book early? Sorry?
Book early. Yeah, book early. That's the advice that I will give you, that all over the world, and India included, over time, you will see that tickets will only get more expensive over time. Hotels will get more expensive over time. And I would say that if I had to give people one advice, it would be just book early. You can consider taking a chance that might some airline reduce fares over time, etc. And look, once, twice, 3 times you may get lucky, but if you were to average this out over multiple years and multiple people and multiple airlines, the one thing I would advise is just book early, because generally speaking, you'll get the best deals early.
Yeah. Okay. So how early for domestic and how early for international?
As early as your plans are firm, right? And so if you've decided to holiday on the 22nd of December, great, book now. If you've decided to holiday in March of 2026, fantastic, book now. Right? So it's a question of whenever your travel plans are firm, it's best to book your hotels and your air travel at that point. And by the way, I live the advice that I am providing. Me and my family in our personal travel do it the same way.
Okay. So it's believed that making a booking on Tuesdays gets you a good deal. Is that true?
I have no idea. You'll have to confirm that for yourself. Look, I don't know. And by the way, if someone says that's a pattern on Akasa, then I will go bust it up right away, because that's not the way we are, as an airline. That's not the way we're supposed to do our pricing and revenue management. There should be no such patterns of book on this day or book on that day. Look, are there weaker travel days? Sure, there are weaker travel days and stronger travel days. Are there weaker seasons? Absolutely. But I'm not looking at this from saying, look, if your children's holiday are in April and May, that's a peak season. So by the way, cancel their schools and holiday in August, which is a low season. That's not the type of question you are asking me, right? I'm assuming if someone needs to holiday in June, they need to holiday in June. If someone has a business trip in August, they have a business trip in August. And so, look, we should not be having any kind of patterns of tickets being cheaper on, if you buy them on a particular day. That's not the way it's supposed to be. If it is, it's a coincidence, in my view, or it's a mistake that needs to be corrected.
Okay. Vinay, I want to ask you some big picture questions. And, right now the Indian aviation market is considered to be a duopoly, with both Air India and IndiGo controlling more than 90% of the market share. Would you like to speak about, what are the dangers of a duopoly? And within this duopoly, let me say Akasa Air is sort of a ray of hope. Everybody is hoping and supporting the fact that, Akasa Air is here for a long term. It's a stable airline. It has great leadership. And so, therefore, it holds a ray of hope for the market. But what are some of the challenges or some of the issues due to a duopoly?
Yeah. So Jagriti, we have never looked at this, as a duopoly or not a duopoly. We have looked at this as, as a business. If we are able to be efficient from a cost perspective, if we're able to be well capitalized, and if we genuinely serve our consumers well, then our Indian market is big enough for multiple carriers to thrive. So we don't characterize the Indian market in one way or the other. We are just hyper focused on serving our consumers well. And as I told you, where our thinking goes is, what is the design of the seat? Do we want it rock hard, or do we want to actually pay for the extra weight it takes to carry extra foam? And we have decided that we will pay for the extra weight it takes to carry foam and have our seats be more comfortable. We have decided that we will, serve this absolutely amazing. It's a chicken and cranberry croissant that I love, and that we're gonna, not skimp on the meat in there. Or if we're gonna have a mushroom and brie croissant, we're not gonna skimp on the mushroom and the cheese, right? And so these are the elements of our decision making that we're focused in. Not labeling the market one way or the other, because our feeling is that as long as you're focused on those elements, as long as you're focused on the kindness with which we approach people, as long as you're focused on the on-time performance of the airline, these are the elements which will define our success. And if we're able to do that, it doesn't matter who's on our left and right. It really doesn't matter.
But if we look at, the Jet Airways days and the sheer number of players that were there in the market versus now, you had, Vistara as a separate entity, you had AirAsia India. But now there's Air India, there's IndiGo, there's Akasa, there is Spice, and there is a regional player called there's Air India Express. There's a regional player called Star Air. Do you think India needs and deserves more players? And why do you think do we see airlines collapse so often?
So I will, honestly, I'll not go to why airlines collapse. I will say that, as a country, we should be able to support, many players successfully, and to support and to have these players thrive. It does not mean somebody else needs to, wither away and die. So yes, as a country, given population size 1.4 billion, with, several thousand kilometers, from north to south and east to west, absolutely, we should be able to support many, many more airlines. I will say, though, however, that at this particular moment in time, it is hard to launch an airline. And the reason it's hard to launch an airline, or hard for another player to really grow dramatically, it's because planes just simply aren't available from the OEMs, right? If you were to go to Airbus, if you were to go to a Boeing, you just don't have those kind of aircraft. Could you go to a smaller regional jet? You could, but in the current state of our evolution, you need these workhorses of the 737s and the 320s. And if I were to go to a manufacturer with lots of money and say, look, I've got a $1 trillion and I want to start an airline, unfortunately, the manufacturers will not be able to deliver these aircraft to you in the next 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 years even.
But you do bring, vast experience of 30 plus years. There was not just Jet Airways, but before that, you were with Delta Airlines as well. And I do want to ask you, as somebody who tracks aviation and aviation policy, I sometimes feel that there is like my favorite word is sense of schizophrenia, which is that everybody is celebrating. People are talking about the large growth that India provides in the aviation space. There's mention of large number of airports being developed, and there are also big aircraft orders that are being placed. And yet, at a basic level, from an air traveler's point of view, air travel is not easy. It's frustrating, it's painful, and this is a traveler's perspective. You start your journey much before the booking experience will not be great because there are too many OTAs, and there are sort of challenges there as well. What is happening and what is being promoted? Then you enter the airport. The airport is overcrowded, and these aspects. And therefore, I want you to sort of suggest some regulatory changes or some others, maybe infrastructure improvements that should be carried out in order to sort of make India people talk about aviation hub, but at least a great market.
Yeah. So Jagriti, you've got the wrong person to ask that question because when I travel through the airport, and by the way, I don't travel with 6 people carrying my luggage most of the time. 99.9% of the time, no one knows I'm coming. I travel like anybody else. But for me, traveling is just wonderful. And by the way, I also travel the globe. And just to give you an anecdote of why I am on the side of the euphoria that you talk about, and the fact that I am high praise for the airports that we've built and the demand, etc., is because my son came back for a little holiday. He's studying in the US, and he came back, and he stopped off in Europe. He was forced to stop off, as students don't take the most expensive itinerary, and he got a cheaper itinerary with stops, and so he had to go through immigration in Europe, prior to coming to India, and then immigration back in North America. And if you see our family WhatsApp text, it'll be he's saying the best immigration experiences in Mumbai airport, right? And so sometimes we kick ourselves, going, oh, it's too crowded, and security is a pain, etc. And people should try, flying in other parts of the world, and then come look at the Indian context relative to that. Our planes in India are newer and cleaner. The average age of the Indian fleet is probably half the average age of the European or North American fleet. If we think our airports are, look, can we compare ourselves to Changi, or can we compare ourselves to another here? Look, if you pick the best airport and then you pick the best this and the best that, is that aspirational? Absolutely, that's aspirational. Do we have discussions with our government on how we can improve this, that, or the other? Absolutely. Is the government open and have they taken action? 100%. But let's also appreciate what we as a nation have achieved and what we as a nation have going for us. And the average age of the Akasa fleet is 1.5 years old. It's where in the world do you get that? And by the way, we could talk about the average age of other competitors, but they're not that far off. We are the youngest, but it's not like IndiGo's got a 15-year-old fleet, not at all, right? And so, these are some of the things that I think we should appreciate as we work on improving the other elements of our aviation experience.
But sometimes there are these fundamental service delivery lapses. For instance, I mean, with something like wheelchairs, and a country like ours where there is such a huge senior citizen population, and you see somebody lost their life or ended up in a coma because a wheelchair could not be insured for them, and at the same time you're seeing airports pushing through third party wheelchair services and buggy services. So there seems to be like some fundamental shortcomings as well from a passenger experience point of view.
I'd say, look, I have not counted the number of wheelchairs, but we at Akasa are very particular. If someone books a wheelchair, we will ensure they have a wheelchair. When it comes to third-party buggy services and third-party providers, look, Jagriti, this happens in every part of the world. You have third-party buggy providers and third-party, wheelchair service providers. So from a structure perspective, I think the structure is fine. Now, we need to look at every individual incident of what happened in this particular incident or that particular incident, because look, will we get our service right 100% of the time? No, we won't. And so I won't talk about, anybody else. I'll say we won't get our service, right 100% of the time, but we take great pains to understand where we don't get it right, what happened, and, work on this Kaizen principle of continuous improvement. So I want to separate out the structure of the third parties from where, airlines, including us, need to work on this continuous improvement principle.
Thanks for taking a wide range of questions. I have one last question for you. You've spoken earlier in this interview about how developments around the world could impact aviation, and those sort of challenges and turbulent periods keep coming up from time to time. And I want to understand from you that as a leader, what has been your personal compass that sees you through these turbulent times? You've seen the pandemic hit the aviation industry as well as everybody in the world, and then challenges with starting up of Akasa, what happened over the past 1 year with delivery delays, etc. So what's your own sort of compass or anchor?
Yeah, so I'd say let me sort of divide this into three parts, because you have three different elements of grounding, or three different elements of of being calm through turbulent times. From a business perspective, I'll have two elements, and then from a personal side, I'll give you one element. I wish I could boil it down to one thing, because you did say what's the one thing, but I have to answer it three ways. From a business perspective, and because we're talking about aviation, one of the anchors is be well capitalized, right? You recognize the fact that in aviation, there'll be ups and downs, and you have to be well capitalized to be able to weather the ups and downs. The second element is of business, and I'll divide this, so one is more strategy. The other one is, surround yourself with good people. You can't, in aviation, there's nothing that you can do on your own. If you don't have a good team, you're dead, right? And so surround yourself with people that are better than you, surround yourself with people that you like working with, create that, professional culture. And so these are two very, very important elements from a work perspective. From a non-work perspective, I will tell you, Mumbai, certainly, India in general, has a way of grounding me, because I go out of my office, I get into my car, and at the first traffic light, within 100 meters from our office, if you look left and right, you'll see homeless children, you'll see people living on the street. And at that point, if you don't have the mentality to say that, look, compared to them, it doesn't matter what business problem I'm facing. I am just lucky and fortunate to be sitting in a car with an air conditioner on. Then I think you need to get your head examined. And so it's that perspective that, that personally grounds me, is that I genuinely feel fortunate and lucky to have what I have, the family that I have, the comforts that I have. And it's that grounding that allows me to get through the ups and downs, because people have it just a lot harder. And you have to consider yourself fortunate.
Yes, that's important. I mean, so much of the conversation today is about mental health, work-life balance, the need to look beyond
Correct.
work and your own profession and career. But thank
Yeah.
you so much, Vinay, for this conversation. And to our viewers, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jagriti.
Thank you for your time, Vinay. Hope to do many more conversations in later episodes with you. And to our viewers, we hope you enjoyed the chat. Do note that we are streaming across all podcasting platforms. Thank you for watching us.